Uh, I would say it's more likely that the completely stalled offensive that Russia has had. It's been, this grinding, virtually no territory being taken, massive casualties, particularly in terms of the Russian soldiers, over 1 million casualties in this war for Russia so far in 3.5 years. It's a staggering number. It's hard to even imagine what that
Right.
means for society, but Putin doesn't care. It's hard to imagine that that's going to continue the way it has for the next 6 to 12 months, in part because it's going to be very difficult for Ukraine to continue to defend their territory and field the soldiers to do so over the coming year, but also in part because Trump is angry about this. He thought that he was going to leverage his relationship with Putin,
Yeah.
however it existed, into a ceasefire. He made Putin a lot of offers, ending sanctions and the like, and Putin said no
Right.
thank you, and has embarrassed Trump, has
Yeah.
angered Trump. And Trump is bringing it up. He never brings up his failures. He forgets about them. It's one of his political skills, not on Russia. And instead he's talking about providing extended range missiles to Ukraine that could take out Russian energy capability, and he's privately pushing the Hungarians, the Turks, the Indians, saying, I
Right.
want you to end your purchasing of Russian oil. He wasn't willing to do
Right.
that a month ago. So there is real movement here from President Trump himself to try to not just offer Putin a carrot ineffectually, but
Right.
also include some stick.
Dr. Bremmer, let's finish up with this. We had a riveting conversation with Admiral Mullen at the Bloomberg Global Forum the other day. He was just on the South China Sea. Extraordinary. The submarine secrets there, the Hainan, the island off China. I think Americans, Ian, are ignorant that Taiwan isn't one monolithic island. Explain to us the strategic realities for Americans of Kinmen and Matsu Islands just off the coast of China. What are the immediate risks to those frontline islands in Taiwan?
Well, of course, China's ability, if they wanted to engage in warfare with less consequence, taking those over or blockading those much easier, right? And with very little ability for the Americans to respond or its Asian allies to respond militarily. But nobody really believes near term that's going to happen, in part because the United States is oriented to work with China on Taiwan. Look, Trump and Xi Jinping had a phone call, much anticipated last Friday.
Right,
And the single thing that Trump most wanted, which he got, was a nod from Xi Jinping on the US taking over TikTok with political loyalists installed in charge of it. And that's the thing that matters most to Trump. It allows him to undermine the free media, control the information space, and better ensure that he and his advisors can
right,
control 2026 and 2028. What the Chinese want is for Trump to back away and say that they oppose independence for Taiwan, as President Bush had once before. And I think that Trump is oriented to provide that, frankly. So we're not heading towards escalation right now with the Chinese. We're actually heading towards both sides getting something that really matters to the individual leaders.
you mentioned it was one final question. I got 8 ways to go here, folks, with Ian Bremmer, always the case. You mentioned the collapse of USAID, US aid. I've got family members abroad that say it's been devastating for Africa. Explain right now at the beginning of this fourth quarter the impact of the lack of US aid.
The United States is the most powerful country in the world. It's the strongest economy by far, and the U.S. has historically been doing the most in terms of providing aid to other countries and to the people in those countries that need it, whether they're suffering from malaria, whether they're vulnerable to HIV/AIDS, whether they're starving, whether they're facing forced migration. The U.S. has done that directly. It's also led the charge in doing that indirectly through American support for the United Nations and the organizations that it stands up, like the World Food Program, for example. The United States has decided that those things should no longer be priorities. that America first means that these other countries should have to make their own way. They should have to pay for themselves. Now, the Chinese see this as a great opportunity. In the same way that when the Americans cut back on visas, the Chinese immediately say, we're going to make it easier for talented people to come. They won't be as attractive in terms of their aid. But if they are the lead power, I mean, they made up their dues, many of which were in arrears at the UN. The Americans aren't paying. The Chinese said, okay, we'll pay some of ours now so that they can put forward that they're the ones that are more accountable. Look, if you think that only American hard power matters, and maybe
Right.
in the short term that's true, then and you don't care very much about non-Americans and don't think
Right.
that they are as deserving or that we should take care of any of them, we don't have accountability, then it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But that's never been my view, and I think it's a mistake long term.